Everyone, thank you for joining me and my colleagues for the final session of today. We heard so far that Asian markets offer many opportunities. So we want to use this session to look deeper on the best way to find opportunities in this region. Colin, can I start with you first? As head of Asia Equities, let me ask you, what is your secret for picking stocks?
Sorry, have to review our trade secrets. But I must, thank, first of all, thanks to Chairman of UOB Asset Management, Mr. Lee Wai-Fai, for his leadership and also the vision of our CEO, Mr. Teo Phoon Keat, as well as the support of our CIO, Mr. Chong Chin Yeh, in order for UOBAM to embark into the AI journey. I recall that was back 5 years ago when my CEO, Mr. Teo, wanted investments to take on the challenge of adopting AI. I mean, it was really, you can imagine 5 years ago was that I have to work from a blank sheet of paper. Of course, with the guidance and vision of Mr. Teo, we certainly carefully planned out a man-machine investment process before implementing it back in mid of 2020. The key here was that, we were all made to attend AI courses, data camp courses, even learn Python coding. Had a pretty tough time back in 2019 as we embark into the new thought. But of course, have to be really very positive in terms of thinking. The key here is that the key change that we had was that we hire a data scientist back in mid of 2019, and basically a lot of work started from then. The AI machine learning algorithm basically provide us a statistical probability of a sample portfolio outperforming the benchmark. And there the humans provide the human so-called validation through vigorous financial analysis. And on top of that, we overlay with adequate risk management measures. Because if not, an AI portfolio will likely to be a trading portfolio, but we also basically wanted it to be a professionally managed portfolio with certain risk measures, portfolio turnover characteristics, and also keeping some limits in terms of tracking error. And on top of that, we also add on with a portfolio optimization given certain risks at certain level that we are comfortable with. With that, we are certainly more confident to introduce this product to our investors. So thankfully, after, I would say, now we are back in 2024, and as a lead manager of the United Asia Fund, as well as the United Greater China Fund, these two funds basically are 5-star rated by Morningstar. And for United Greater China Fund, it has actually won the Lipper Awards for 2 consecutive years, and then last year and this year for best performing fund in the region. So in that sense, I would say this AI journey has at least brought some fruits, and certain confidence for us, for UOBAM, to roll out our AI solutions to other asset class and strategies as well.
Colin, in this case, can you give us some examples of the good stock decision the team has made together with you?
Okay, in previous seminars, UOB Asset Management don't usually talk about or giving stock recommendation or example. But in this instance, it's very important that, in order for the audience to understand how human and machine interact with each other, so I would probably give you an example here. So this is a stock that is listed in Hong Kong. It's a China stock. It's called Hisense Home Appliance. It's a second-tier Chinese white group brand names after the bigger players like Haier, if you're all probably aware, or Meiteor. The key here is that in a bull market, I once told by my senior, it's very easy to pick stocks in a bull market. Even a grandmother can do better than the fund manager. But of course, it's not so easy peasy as to pick a stock in a bear market. So if you look at ASEAN, this is a chart in China market. China had a 3-year bear run, but this stock was being highlighted by our AI augmentation process. And what happens there is that the analysts further conduct our due diligence and found that actually the company is actually operating pretty well, improving profitability, gaining market share. And therefore, we invested in that company, and still is in our portfolio ever since back in July of 2023. So it's actually 1 year. So the AI trading model, the process that we have, doesn't mean that we trade our stocks. Stocks can be actually in the portfolio as long as the AI still suggests that there's still further potential in it. The second example I just want to highlight here is that humans also take a part, in terms of our AI augmentation process. So I just want to give you an example of this company called NIO. As you're all aware, NIO is one of the China's finest electric vehicle maker. Back in, this stock was recommended back in late of 2020. And that, there are, again, machine can recommend certain things because they foresee certain trends, But we also take into consideration the human element as well. And given our experience in analyzing stocks, using the fundamental approach to avoid pitfalls. So, when you look at investments, not only you have to try to get winners, but you also have to avoid losing big in terms of avoiding some of these stocks that, after a year, at that time, we would not know, but, after 3 years with the benefit of hindsight, you can see that the stock basically just languishing below. The reasons why we did not invest in the stock is that we avoided jumping into some of this bandwagon or concept because we understand that during our analysis, the cash flows was negative, there's no profitability, and it was all based on concept that EVs will become stronger. But bear in mind that as we also understand the industry was that there's actually a lot of competition within car makers. A better way to invest in the EV space is probably invest in EV battery makers like CATL, where there are fewer competitors. So this is some of the human value add that we add to our AI augmentation approach. And finally, is that in India, we all know that in India market, it's all very expensive stocks, even from last year to this year. But our AI model actually highlighted this stock called Bharat Petroleum. And not only that, there's actually a few gas companies as well in India. They actually were not as expensively valued. So they are still trading at single-digit valuation in terms of PE. Although it is a cyclical business, we understand it. But there again is that at least this AI augmentation process can sieve out some of this value. And even in a very expensive market where India is trading at 20 over times in terms of PE multiples, you can see that single-digit PE is probably too cheap to ignore. And since then, ever since we have invested in the stock, again here, very timely and produces strong positive return that help our performance. So all in all is that, where we are confident is because after 5 years investing in our AI journey, in terms of resources, in terms of manpower, in terms of this technology, and at least, we have some fruits, that our funds are actually performing pretty well. And therefore, I'm on this stage to speak to all of you all.
Thanks, Colin. Definitely, what you have just shared is similar to what Mr. George Yeo has mentioned earlier on. You can have all the data on your dashboard, but he still say the human element, you got to know as well. That's where the analysts come in, the on-the-ground research. It sort of complement it and give us even more confidence whether to avoid a stock like the previous NEO one or to go into a particular stock. So in this case, Colin, how easy or hard is it for you to incorporate tech into your research process, considering that tech has only started 5 years ago, while you have been a fund manager for more than 20 over years?
Well, I've been a manager for specializing in equity market, Asian equity market for 30 years right now. I must say that fund management is a combination of science and art. Art in terms that you pick up stock picking skills with experience because you tend to look at different industries. You can actually avoid some of the pitfalls when you conduct what we term as vigorous financial analysis, cash flow statements, for example, and also speaking to management during company visits. Science, in this instance is that we follow a portfolio construction process, a whole investment process. And recently, over the last 5 years, we further complicate the whole investment process with a bit of AI, with the AI approach. I believe here is that adopting the new AI technology is basically to stay relevant in the industry. And as our result has shown that, we are also pretty encouraged with our results that, winning, being rated 5-star is not easy by Morningstar. What it means is that, to be a 5-star rated funds, it has to be in the top decile over the last 3-5 years. So this is something that, of course, all asset manager would like to showcase the product. I think where at UOBAM, under the guidance of Mr. Teo, is that we also want to ensure that our portfolio, our investments are also carefully thought out. The whole process in terms of risk characteristics. We want it to be also tailor-made for our investors. At the end of the day, we are basically conducting our fiduciary duty for our investors. And in that sense, I say it's not a question of being easy or hard. I think it's actually very necessary to stay relevant in this fast-moving financial industry.
Francis, let me turn to you. Frontier Asia market like Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam are especially challenging. What is your investment approach as an ASEAN head in UOB Asset Management?
So I would say we look at 3 things that drive our investment process. I think the first thing is that we think local knowledge and analysis can help to uncover insights into companies or sectors that we look at. And with these insights, we aim to exploit the inefficiencies that exist within the markets. Yeah? And we are able to do this because of our extensive footprint in ASEAN, our latest addition being in frontier market, Vietnam. The second thing I would say is the AI augmentation. I think Colin has talked quite extensively about that. So we are increasing the application. So from Asia, now we are also moving to ASEAN. And so far, the results that we are seeing in the live portfolios are quite similar to what we are seeing in Asia as well. And just finally, whenever we uncover very strong ideas or differentiated ideas, we make sure we express it meaningfully in the portfolio, right? What we term as high active share. So if you get it right, you will make it will make a meaningful impact to the portfolio.
So in this case, can you share with us some examples of how this approach has helped you in your stock picking?
So earlier this morning, I think there was some talk about China plus one or trade diversion. Yeah? So this we think is actually a very big trend in ASEAN. If you look at FDIs, for example, right? FDI inflows in ASEAN over the last decade, ASEAN's share of global FDIs have more than doubled during this period, right? And we think it will continue to do well. Yeah? China plus one has certainly accelerated this trend, right? So you have identified the trend. So as investors, we think, how do you express it? How do you make use of this information to try to get extra returns? So we think one of the best ways to play this is actually via the electrical and electronic industry, because these were sectors that were getting a lot of inflows of FDIs. And if you look at the tech manufacturing space within ASEAN, actually more than half the investable opportunities are in Malaysia. Of all markets, is in Malaysia, right? So when we invested in this trend, we had very rewarding investments. I can give you two examples. One was D&O. D&O, while some in this room may not know this company, is actually a top 5 global player for car LED. Your cars, all your LED lamps, this is like one of the top 5 players in the world. We make 6 times our money on this, right? Because of this trend. The other one is Genetec. Genetec, they do automation equipment. Again, there's a lot of trend to, as labor gets more expensive and they want to get more efficient, so automation helps. So that stock, we make 4 times our money. So the investment opportunities are definitely there. You just have to kick the tires and find some of these things. And again, local knowledge gives you a huge competitive edge in uncovering some of these stocks.
So if researching into ASEAN company research is already difficult, Francis, as we all know, the world is moving towards ESG as well. And how do you go about this in this case then?
Okay, so at UOBAM, our ESG center is in Singapore. So the center helps to formulate policies, procedures, and all that. And it's helped by each country has an ESG analyst as well, right? So that gives you the local knowledge, the local flavor. And part of the challenge is that many of the markets are at different stages of development, right? So by having a team that is able to share a lot of knowledge, I think it helps in that, the people will have an insight into what could potentially happen in the future, right? And I can give you an example why having a person on the ground makes a difference. So when we first started our ESG effort, one of the first things that we had to do is to populate your ESG rating database, right? And for many companies, you will use maybe an information service provider as a base. So in our case, we use MSCI as the base. Now, when we mapped the information from MSCI to our universe, let's say in Malaysia, we found that only half of our universe in Malaysia was covered by MSCI, right? So the point is, if you just rely on information service providers, you are going to have huge information gaps. So having a presence on the ground certainly helps you again in terms of covering, plugging all these gaps and making sure that you can invest in the entire universe with taking into consideration ESG.
Yeah, okay. Let me just ask both of you, based on both man and machine, where are you detecting opportunities in Asia and in ASEAN? Colin, maybe you can start first.
Well, I think one of the key reasons for why our Greater China Fund and our Asia Fund has been performing pretty well is that we have an underweight position in this market, in China market, actually for the past 1 over year. And that recently, our AI augmentation model actually suggests increasing more exposure towards China. Now, having looked at China market for a very long time, I personally find that, given at current level, it's actually very attractively valued. Even there's this US-China competition, ongoing competition. I find that, when we invest in China as a whole, I think the previous speakers, even George Shou can attest to it, is that the potential for China market is actually even stronger given the recent 3 years of bear market correction in this market. So, if you invest in China, you basically have to invest in the strength of China. So basically, you have to look at this industrial supply, the whole industrial complex, including its supply chain. So you have to look at, basically the material aspect, your China rare earth, your China EV battery producers. They are very dominant, and the Western producer have not actually made substantial investment, even as today, to challenge that dominance. So we are talking about a competitive advantage over at least the next 5-10 years. On top of that, I think also recently I read with actually a bit of excitement is that China is actually developing the next generation logistic network. So that will include what they term as a low altitude economy. What it means is that, we know China are very strong in drones. DJI has more than 85% market share in drones. But that's where, together with government policy, they're going to push this low altitude economy, which will include the usage of drones for logistic purposes, as well as what we term as electric vertical takeoff. That is like your chopper, and all these will be powered by batteries. And you can imagine the usage of EV batteries, and that's where China has a competitive edge in terms of the material supply chain. And with this development, I'm sure even it will basically present a lot of opportunity for this market and for the investors.
Francis?
We are seeing opportunities in the consumer space in ASEAN. Not a new story. I think in the past, I think people have broke this story about China consumer. ASEAN consumer. We think the difference now is that if you look at the income levels, we are actually very excited, especially excited for Indonesia, Vietnam, and Philippines. Their GDP per capita is actually about or getting close to $4,000 per year, right? And I think some studies have shown that when you reach that kind of threshold, your discretionary spending will start to accelerate. Yeah? So we think consumption trends in ASEAN is looking really very interesting. And when you consider these are the 3 most populous countries within ASEAN, they constitute more than 70% of the population of ASEAN. Yeah? So large population getting to an income level where they will spend more. So again, how do you express this? Right? So the most obvious one is to buy consumer-related stocks, right? Even in consumer space, we look beyond the Indo-Foods of the world or the CP oils of the world. Yeah? So there are quite a lot of consumer options you can have. The other things we also look at are consumer proxies to the consumer sector. So one of them we think is financial services. Okay? So I bring out the example of, if you look at Indonesia and and Philippines. And if you look at the household credit as a percentage of GDP, and you compare it to, let's say, Malaysia or Thailand is 8 to 5 times more than what Indonesia and Philippines is. So the point is, we think the runway for growth for financial services in these markets will continue to accelerate. And in Indonesia, we have the added advantage of being able to invest in Sharia compliant financial services company, right? The experience in Malaysia shows that your Sharia assets can grow faster than conventional. And Indonesia, most populous is a Muslim nation in the world, right? So the opportunities are definitely there. And finally, the other consumer proxy that we like is e-commerce. So right now, the poster childs are things like Grab and Sea Limited. But if you look at the number of new unicorns that are being minted in ASEAN, we think that gives you quite a good flavor as to what could happen in the future, right? So most of these new unicorns that are being minted currently are still in private markets. You give them time, in another 5 to 10 years, potentially they could come into listed equities, and that's where we as investors can benefit directly from it.
Gentlemen, I'm sure most of you have questions for these two panelists here. Unfortunately, we are running very short of time. And if you do allow me to have some closing remarks, okay? I would like to thank everyone for your questions. For this session, definitely we've run out of time, and it's between us and your lunch here. And it's also the end for this mid-year event today. But before we start the lunch, let me say on behalf of the whole UOB Asset Management team on how grateful we are for you to join us in this event, especially for those that have traveled from overseas. I also want to thank the speakers, our friends here who join us today, for sharing your insights on Asia as well as global itself. May I close this event by mentioning a few things that caught my attention listening to the speakers this morning. I was struck by Mr. Yeo's speech, or sharing that the world is entering much more turbulent times. But Asia can still survive if we stay united and driven by our core values. On the AI front, it seems like using AI to generate alpha is still not very common. So we do have an edge here. So there is still a lot of opportunities for innovation in this space. Our partners from US as well as Europe, what I hear is that there is this underestimation of Asia's potential. One of the reasons is that they tend to focus more on the macro itself. While listening to our colleagues here, we know that going on the ground to be more micro does add a lot of value. And I definitely feel the same way as UOBAM CEO for Malaysia itself. I know how important it is, but at the same time, it's very difficult to do a full research of the Asian universe. And I think we owe it to our investor to do even better in this area. That concludes our panel and presentation for today. Have an enjoyable lunch, and I hope to have a chance to catch up with you guys later on. Thank you.